Hey, you are on Wani right now with us today. I have my good friend Frank Ellen from FEN. I won't call them a legendary, but they are very close to being called as legends. How are you
Oh,
doing,
that's
brother?
a compliment. I'm not bad at all. I'm not bad at all. Thank you very much for the interview. And legendary is a big word, but
And that's why I said very
your word.
close to being a legendary man.
Well, who knows? Who knows what history may say as we move forward? But I'll take it as a compliment from your end.
Wonderful. Now, Carrion Skies released a few weeks ago, and in my opinion, it's a very fantastic album. Definitely one of my favorites for the year. So that's my response. But your fans, how have they received it? How has been the reception so far?
It's generally been pretty good. It was interesting. We knew we were taking a little bit of a risk with this new album because we consciously made a decision to make it a bit more metal, a bit more direct,
Mhm.
bit more extreme. It was something that we all agreed once we sort of finished the tour for Dustwalker at the end of, at the
Right,
middle of last year. We Dustwalker had quite a lot. The concept of the album was quite ethereal. It was a lot about sort of this sort of nebulous spiritual concept of feeling slightly
right,
half formed, and parts of the music reflected that. There's a whole song on there which was purely clean guitar, quite a lot of quite sort of misty ambience on that one. And this
right.
this album, we felt that we wanted to go down a slightly more direct and sort of slightly more sort of thunderous road. So
True.
there was a conscious decision to make the album a little bit harder. And I think people who appreciated the more sort of the more atmospheric, sort of more ambient side of the last album were a
Right.
little bit taken aback with that. So we've had some. I wouldn't say negative feedback on that front, but I think the people who preferred the slightly more delicate parts of Dustwalker have been a little bit taken aback by it. But generally speaking, I think most people have got into it. We've had a lot of good feedback from our listeners, a lot of people who've really got into the slightly more punishing sound of the new record. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still obviously some atmospheric bits on it.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's taken some fans aback, but some people really like it. Some people are really into the way it's gone, and that's great. And it's always good to get feedback from your listeners. I think it's for me personally, I'm always interested in what people have to say. I think for a band like us who's on our fourth record now, I think there is that symbiotic relationship with your listeners, and I think
Right.
it is a bit of it can be a two way dialogue, and it's something that we always encourage people to feed back to us and let us know what they think about our stuff.
That's really cool because when we talk about FEN in general, it's like what I feel like bands like FEN, Opeth, Mastodon, you either love them or you hate them. It depends. It depends on how what sort of how you perceive their music. But from your
Absolutely.
from your personal side, how pleased are you with Carrion Skies?
I'm personally very, very happy with it.
Hmm.
It was a bit like it was a very, very focused album. It was one that we went on tour with Aglock last year.
Right.
We spent a month on the road with those guys, and that sort of opened our eyes as to a level of professionalism that we really, really it set the bar for us. We thought these guys they've got a really good following, and they're doing things incredibly professionally. We need to step up to that. I felt that we'd achieved quite a lot already by this point, but it really underlined to us. We all sort of sat down, the three of us sat down after the tour, and we said this next album has to be, it has to be 100%. We have to absolutely commit to it. We have to make sure the material is as honed as possible. We'd already written quite a lot of stuff actually before we went away, and then when we got back, we brutally assessed everything we had. Some songs were just disposed of, other songs were rearranged, written. It was a very intense writing and arranging process, and then once we'd done that, we were like, right, this one we have to record in a professional studio this time.
Nice.
All the releases we'd done up to that point, we'd recorded ourselves on my own equipment, and we decided this time we'll get an external producer and we'll do this in a pro studio. We wanted to push ourselves and take ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit, and I think the album sort of bears up to that. I think the album vindicates it. We worked very, very hard. The studio, it was 12, 13-hour days, non-stop. The guitar tracking sessions were very, very
Awesome.
long, very, very intense. Um, but I think the results are worth it. I think you can hear for me personally, I think you can hear the intensity and focus that's going on in the record. Yeah, we all sat down when we got the masters back. The three of us, we all just, I think they were emailed over to us, and we just all sent each other texts almost at the same time saying, yes, this
This
is
is
done.
it. This is it.
This is achieved what we wanted it to achieve. Um, Whether what we've achieved with it is what some of our listeners wanted it to be is as always open to debate. But
It's a
for us,
different thing
sitting back
altogether. The stuff which you have created, whether fans are going to connect to it or not, that you're not concerned about.
well, for us, I mean, it's for us, we have to first and foremost do what we want to do as a band.
Right,
That's
right.
the absolute consideration. But it would be remiss and it would be disingenuous to suggest that our supporters and our listeners are not in mind when we're putting an album together. We don't want to. It's this at this stage. We do owe it to our listeners to take some sort of consideration of that. And if we suddenly decided to do some sort of electronica dubstep album to really sort of mess with people's heads, it would be a little bit dishonest. And I think if we did something like that, we'd have to do it under a different band name or something like that. But no, the first impulse is to create something which we believe needs to be created. And certainly for this album, it was one that we got back and we thought, right, this is the road we want to go down. This is the path this material needs to take.
That's awesome, because when we talk about the improvements and the approach you guys have taken, like you explained, the vibe in the studio when you guys were working, and also the effort that's put by the band on this album is definitely different as compared to your previous albums.
Yeah, I mean, it was normally when we've recorded in the past, we've recorded it ourselves. And you can kind of take your time with that, really. I sort of do the vocal tracking at home in an evening every now and then, and you can sort of take a bit of time recording the guitars. My bass player, my brother doesn't live too far away, so he'll come over in an evening and we'll put some bass lines down. It's quite a relaxed approach, and I felt this time around, it's easy to rest on your laurels a bit like that. And we were looking at thinking about recording it, and I thought, no, I think that we need to snap ourselves out of our comfort zone. We needed to, to use a bass expression, we needed to kick ourselves up the arse a bit with this one. And we did. We went into the studio, and it was a different way of working. It was waking up, having breakfast, and then straight back into where you were. Absolutely, you literally for the days when I was doing the guitar and vocal tracking, it was 4 days of literally sleeping and recording. There was nothing else, and but it was great. It was really, really hard work, but it was incredibly satisfying. It was really, really motivating to just be completely focused, absolutely no distractions. The studio recorded that was in the middle of nowhere, really. It's not like we could just, you're sort of thinking, oh, we've done a couple of hours, should we go to the pub for a bit? There was literally sitting in the studio just focusing absolutely 100% on the music, which is, as it should be, I suppose.
Right, that's really true. And when we talk about, the approach you guys have taken, I mean, you've never been a straightforward black metal band. You have gorgeously infused, the post-rock elements, the shoegaze elements into your music. So we talk about Carrion Skies. Where do you see your music, go on from here?
It's interesting. Every time an album's done, because you're so close to it, I always have to sort of take a step back and just let it breathe for a month or two, and just leave it alone a bit. But we have, I have started thinking about where we go from here in terms of what we do with the music. And if I'm honest, I think we're the post rock and shoegaze elements we've brought on board in the past, I think that's going to be there, but I think we're going to take it down perhaps a slightly less melodic path. I think we're all starting to feel that we're interested in perhaps putting some slightly more abstract melodies together, stuff that's slightly less conventional, perhaps bringing some dissonances on board. I think I've been started sort of toying with some new ideas for a couple of new songs, and I think it's going to go down a slightly more angular, abstract path, and perhaps more elements of improvisation. I don't know if you've heard the special edition of the album. There's a bonus track called Coffin Soil. There's a bonus track called Coffin Soil that was on there, where there's a lot of sort of experimentation with kind of improvising noiseescapes and kind of letting things evolve that way. And I think we might start exploring those kind of realms as well. So it's something that we're thinking of looking at, and we're thinking of going down that road. But yeah, there'll always be elements, fusing post rock and shoegaze atmospherics with extreme metal is always part of FEN's DNA from the very first day, and it's not something that will ever be jettisoned, even if in the future it's slightly less overt, it's slightly less kind of, oh, here's the shoegaze bit, here's the post rock bit. I think the goal is to try and sort of fuse it more seamlessly so it becomes one sort of coherent whole.
Right. Have a balance, basically.
Have a balance, but also have it sort of intertwined as well.
Right.
I think it's you look at an album like, particularly like our second album, Epoch, it's very, there's a black metal section, and then there's a post rock section, and it's kind of in that you have like sort of almost the individual bits. Whereas I think the goal, certainly for the next album, is to fuse them so they're kind of almost indistinguishable, and it becomes a sort of just one consistent sound. But as I say, it's very early days yet, and
Right.
who knows what will happen in six months' time. But that's certainly how I feel about where we should be taking this.
That's really awesome. Now, the band deals with a lot of, the mild cynicism, the spirituality, and also that, that getting in touch with, our true selves. So, as a fan, when I listen to, FEN, I feel spiritually connected to the band. But what about you? Do you feel that, you guys have been successful in effectively getting your theme across to the listener like the way you want?
I think so. I think we've always been quite open about what we're trying to achieve. I always say that the band is about taking the listener on a journey, and it's about painting a landscape with music,
right?
Really, and it's down to the listener as to how they really want to enter into that landscape, and how they, some people can and a lot of the lyrics are quite face value. There's a lot of sort of landscape imagery that you can take on face value, but there's of course allegory in there as well. We always say we use the language of the external landscape to reflect the inner landscape, and certainly that was true on Epoch and Dustwalker. There was a lot of sort of personal internal reflection that was being presented externally and being described externally. Carrion Skies is a little bit more external. There's a lot of reflections on humanity as a whole. It's a bit less of a sort of personal journey. It's more of a kind of it's more of a discussion on the humanity and the failings of humanity across the ages that seem doomed to repeat themselves in an endless cycle. But going back to your original question, we just want to take the listener on a journey. I think any of the best songs are songs that have a start, a middle, and an end, and by the end of it, you feel you've gone somewhere. Even a 3-minute. Even a good 3-minute pop song, by the end of it, you feel you've been taken somewhere. And that's always been our goal.
That's absolutely true. Like you said, I mean, when we talk about the lyrical inspiration, you look at the society basically, and you see what's happening around, I mean, the success and the failures of mankind, like you said earlier. So it's more like, do you even, is it more like self-explorative, or you read some poems or books and, get inspiration from?
For me, it's just I don't specifically take influence from. It's not like I'll read some literature and then think, right, I need to now write about this. But it all filters in. I mean, particularly living here in London, you can't help but have what's happening in current affairs stuff. You absorb it almost subconsciously.
Right.
I mean, I guess I've been reading some existential philosophy stuff recently. I've been reading a bit of Sartre and stuff like that, and that again probably subconsciously permeates what's going on. And obviously, when it came to doing the lyrics for this most recent album, I was sort of drawing on my own inner thoughts, my own inner feelings, but it's going to be affected by your surroundings. So it's not been a sort of conscious decision to channel something. But yeah, for this album, there's definitely a sense of anger and a sense of futility and despair, and I think it's always tough. You have bands that rage about the human condition, and you have a lot of black metal tends to rant. You have a lot of sort of anti-humanity black metal and stuff like that. And I always think that there's a fundamental problem with that, is the sense that you're raging against yourself in many ways about that. And I think that's a situation that's undeniable, really. And I guess the underlining fact with Carrion Skies is, whilst I may be addressing the follies of mankind to a degree, I am a human being. I am part of mankind, and I think that just leads to an even greater sense of sort of despair. That as much as you can rail about the problems of humanity, are you yourself part of the problem? So
right.
That also lends another angle to it as well, I think.
Absolutely true. Now, we talked about FEN, but I don't know whether you're aware or not, but there are many fans in India over here who actually follow Armour as well, which is another one of my favorite bands. So any news about that? Because the moment I told my team, hey, look, we're gonna do an interview with FEN, and most of us were like, dude, you gotta ask about Armour, because is there any new music coming? This is the opportunity for us to know about the band.
Oh no, that's cool. I mean, I've never really been interviewed about Armour. I mean, Armour is Andreas's project primarily, to be perfectly honest. So I mean, it's Andreas, who used to play in Armageddon. He plays in London and Stiller as well. yeah, I mean, a second album has been written musically.
Okay.
It's something that we both do. Sort of, it's not obviously he lives in Sweden in the middle of the wilderness, and I'm living here in London, so it's not easy for us to sort of meet up and jam. So he'll send song ideas over to me to put lyrics down and put sort of vocal ideas down.
Hmm.
Yeah, the music for the second album has been written. It's slow progress. Andres he's just recently been in the studio with Stiller, so I'm not sure when we're going to do the final tracking. I think the first half of next year is when it's penciled in. In terms of
Great.
vocals and lyrics, I'd say it's 60 to 70% complete from my side. It's down to whether Andreas decides he might want to change some of the songs and so on and so forth. But yeah, a second album is definitely planned. And as I say, it's pretty much complete in terms of the writing. So
Awesome.
hopefully we'll get to record it next year. I mean, he's been doing a lot of stuff. He's been very busy over the last 18 months. I mean, I think he was originally planning on doing a second album very quickly, but it's just life has kind of got in the way a bit, really. But
Unpredictable.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, and it's one of those sort of things. But yeah, it's definitely on the cards, and I think the new material is yeah, it's keeping up that same very sort of atmospheric. I mean, it's much more traditionally sort of shoegaze, a lot of that sort of Brave Murder Day era
Hmm.
catatonia sort of idea going on there. I think it's going to have a lot more clean vocals on it as well. Yeah, I think there's some good tunes on there, and
Awesome.
I'm trying to sort of the last album was very much he wrote the songs and then just sent them over, but I think this time we're having a bit of mutual feedback, so I make a few suggestions like, oh, I think we should play this riff a couple more times just so that the vocals can do this. And yeah, it's perhaps a little bit more of a collaborative effort this time.
Nice. Really, really good to hear that. Now, how about you
Mm.
tell me about the three albums, in your lifetime that has actually changed you as a person, changed you as a musician?
Wow, now that's interesting. I mean, I think I'd have to say for me, I mean, the fundamental album, the album that convinced me to pick up a guitar in the first place is got to be Whitesnake's 1987.
Awesome.
And and to be honest, even now, sort of, 20 years later, it's still a brilliant record. It's an absolute masterclass of
Evergreen.
hard rock, guitar playing, vocals, everything about the album is splendid, absolutely splendid. Yeah, and so that'd have to be my number one in terms of influence. It's the album that got me into guitar-based music.
Hmm.
Without Whitesnake, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So I have to give thanks to that. It's interesting. I think, thinking about it now, looking at sort of the next album in terms of importance would probably be Paradise Lost's Icon, perhaps.
Awesome. Right.
That was sort of opened the doorway to more extreme music. That was the album that really kind of it acted as a bit of a gateway into getting
Catalyst.
into the. What I say? Sorry.
A catalyst.
Yeah, it was the album that sort of started steering me down a darker path, and it was one that said, "Oh my, okay, so this music can get darker, it can get heavier, it can get more intense." So that was the album that really put me on the dark path, so to speak.
Awesome.
And I think, now we come to talk about it, I think that, in terms of another album, in terms of this whole thing, is probably, and this is going to sound a bit odd, but probably Funeral Mist's Salvation.
That's a
Um,
good choice.
because that came out in 2003, and around then I was feeling really jaded with black metal. I was thinking that, there's not really much happening in this genre.
Hmm.
It's a lot of the original sort of second wave originators had stopped or just started just releasing nonsense, and it was really, I was around that time, sort of 2002. I was thinking, there's this, I'm not really getting much out of this genre anymore.
Awesome.
I was falling out of love with black metal, and that album just made me fall back in love with it. Just not at the risk of sounding like a bit of a fool. It was, I picked it up. I'd heard the band name, and I've been aware of them, and I just thought, oh, they're just another Swedish black metal band. It's just going to sound like, early Dark Funeral and mixed in with a
Right.
bit of Dissection. I'm not sure I'm fussed about it. Put that album on, and an hour later, I was like, that is something else. The atmosphere and conviction here is absolutely something else. This is, and it completely relit the fires. I just got, it showed me that there was stuff very much happening with this genre, and it had been my fault that I was falling out of love with it because I hadn't been paying attention. I hadn't been keeping my finger on the pulse, and I'd got lazy with exploring music. And so from that point onwards, I made a habit of, like, I am going to keep on digging through this genre. There's always stuff that's being creative. There's always creativity and invention going on, even in the very depths of the underground. And it had been my fault that so that really was an eye opener for me. And there's still a huge amount of stuff going on in the genre. It's still a really exciting genre. This year has seen some amazing records be released, and it's the invention shows no sign of slowing. So yeah, those would be three important albums on my sort of musical journey.
Awesome. Now, how about playing live? What plans do you have for 2015 to take the album on road?
We to be honest, the calendar is fairly clear at the moment. We're having a little bit of a break actually. I said to the others once the album's released, I just need a couple of months to recharge. So we haven't been actively seeking gigs. I think start of 2015 we're going to really start looking. We are talking to a few people at the moment. I think we're going to be playing in Scotland at the end of March.
Awesome.
A festival called the North of the Wall Festival, and we're talking to the organisers of the Devilstone Festival in Lithuania as well. They're talking about getting us to play that, which would be great. We've played in Lithuania a couple of times actually. We seem to have quite a good following there. So it's always good. It's always good to play there. So yeah, that's all we've really got on the radar at the moment. But yeah, we're going to sit down at the start of January and start putting some flesh on the bones of some plans and really sort of pushing. I think the goal for next year is to try and get on some festivals. I think that's where we want to be going with it. I think a tour would be good, possibly not a month like we did last time. That was very hard work, and I think particularly given people's job commitments, that could be quite difficult to do a full tour like that again. But certainly a week or two would be great, and possibly even maybe going to America if we can. But yeah, these are all kind of nebulous plans at the moment. We do need to firm them up in January.
Awesome. That really sounds good, Frank. So how about, before I conclude the interview, how about you define Carrion Skies in just one sentence?
Right. Let me think about this. Carrion Skies represents a bleak and intense journey into the dissonance of the human condition.
Awesome.
How about
that? Wow. Well, now that was quick, and that made an impact. It's like a double hammer.
Brilliant. Well, I'm glad that's hammered you.
Fantastic, Fran. I had an honor having a chat with you. I look forward to see you guys live, at least in Europe or here in India. So thank you very much again for doing the interview.
Hopefully, I don't know what the gigging scene is like in India, but I do know some friends who actually played a show there a few years ago. So I don't know if it's something that would ever come on our radar, but if you are ever able to make it to one of the shows in Europe, it'd be fantastic to meet you. So.
Absolutely. I just can't wait to see you guys live. So thank you once again, Frank. Had a great time. I had a great chat with you. Definitely the Sunday spent on a very good thing.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much for the interview, Owais. Have a great evening. Yeah.